Hi everybody, so as you probably know, recently I got this new gaming rig, my Lenovo Legion T5, which is a bit of a beast and has been an amazing help with creating content for the channel. And it's also given me the opportunity to try out lots of PC games in a way that I couldn't really try out when I had my Shadow Cloud gaming PC. And a couple of days ago I was like, tell you what I haven't really done much of was play Battlefield 1. Now Battlefield 1 for me is, and always has been, I would put it in my top 3 games of all time, and I would say it's it's the top respawn multiplayer game of all time. PUBG is my best, no respawn, Battle Royale, then you've got Battlefield 1, and then you've probably got DayZ, next to it, and then various CODs in the runner-up position. And I thought, let's just fire up Battlefield 1 on the Lenovo, and let's try it with a controller. Because to be honest, I'm okay with keyboard and mouse on slower paced games like DayZ, but for shoot 'em ups, for FPSs and third person shooters, for Twitch shooters, I've got to use my controller. So I plugged it in, I fired it up, I adjusted the settings, inverted the camera, adjusted the sensitivity. And I tell you what, I had an absolutely amazing time. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about why was Battlefield 1 so absolutely fantastic? Why was it so great? Now, the gameplay you're seeing in the background is from my Xbox Series S. Because I also then thought, let's get back on the Xbox and play Battlefield 1 on that. I haven't fired up the PlayStation 4 to play it on that, so it's absolutely fantastic. So why is it so good? Why should you even consider about playing it now? Because I think you really should. And I guess top of the list, why Battlefield 1 was so good, is that we had an awful lot of fun in this game. Me and my friends, when we used to play together. Battlefield 1 came out in 2016, and there was this 3-week period of it was like the release period of death. You had Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, you had Titanfall 2, and you had Battlefield. I can't remember if Battlefield was the first one and COD Infinite Warfare was the last one. But I know that Titanfall 2 was in the middle. And it was a really interesting time because Call of Duty was coming off of Black Ops 3, which was a fantastic Call of Duty. Titanfall 2, there was a lot of hype for it. And Battlefield 1, we had the amazing betas during the summer when we were playing the desert map, and we knew this was going to be a really good Battlefield if the other maps were cool. And as it turned out, it was amazing. Almost everything about Battlefield 1 hit the mark. You could spawn in, and we were all terrified that how would DICE deal with the World War I subject. Those familiar with history, World War I was mostly about trench warfare. How could you have a first-person shooter about trench warfare? Well, obviously what they did was they visited lots of different parts of the battlefields of World War I all over the world, and really only returned to trench warfare with the last DLC that came out, in the following year. But they took the really fun mechanics from Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 3, the specialist system, the classes system, and I think they focused everything. I think Battlefield 1 was the pinnacle of what DICE could really create, and it was very well balanced as well. And you could jump in and you could play as a medic with a semi-automatic rifle, you could play as an assault player with an SMG, you could play as a support with an LMG, you play as a sniper rifle, and it was all fun. It was all good stuff. We had the beginning of the amazing game modes. We had operations. There's this much bigger game mode than Conquest, where which was very linear. So you're either attacking or defending. You had to capture the points and move forward. And then later on, with the French DLC that came out in 2017, you then had Frontlines, which could well be the greatest Battlefield game mode of all time. Not quite sure. but especially the Battlefield 1 version of it. So it was a fun game to play every Sunday night. I used to do the Sunday night stream. Lots of friends would come in and we would play Battlefield 1 on our PlayStations and just run around for 2 hours playing Conquest or some of the other modes, and really having a good fun time. It wasn't frustrating at all. Even if you weren't really good at first-person shooters, you could play as a support character like a medic, and you could go around healing people or throwing bandages at them, or you could play as a support player and you could be throwing ammo boxes down or using the mortar. There was lots of really good stuff to do. And I think one of the most amazing things about Battlefield 1, and I would encourage anybody, if you're into first-person or third-person shooters, but you don't want to play Battlefield, you don't want to play the multiplayer, especially if you're on Xbox, so that you can, or play PC, so you can use Game Pass to get it for free. Download it and just play the first mission in the campaign. It might even be the prologue, which is kind of the introduction to it, and it's a montage of situations in the First World War. Incredibly poetic the way they do it, incredibly moving, and treating the subject of World War One incredibly well. Because historically, we all agree that World War One was this terrible tragedy that happened. Did it really need to start in the first place with the assassination in Sarajevo? And then you had these massive armies coming together where millions of young men were just put to the slaughter for this front line that hardly ever moved at all. And then at the end of it, it was great that the war ended, but then, in less than a generation, you had an even worse war, World War Two. So it was like, well, what was it all for? What was World War One all for? And what Battlefield 1 did, and what the developers really did, is they said, look, we're not glorifying war. They would go to extreme lengths to point out the bad things and the good things. But what we need to remember from World War One is that there were heroes, there were struggles, there were people who fought battles in World War One, and they deserve to be remembered. And that really came up. So, for example, when you play Operations, it gives you a background of what the battle is, and you also have various sides. So, for example, in the Amiens Forest, not Amiens Forest, in the Argonne Forest level, where the Americans are talking, one American soldier will be saying, "Yeah, we're really going to give it to the Germans. We're going to show them, what American steel is like." And then another American soldier is going, "Oh my God, have you seen the size of the bunkers and the size of guns that they've got? We're going to get slaughtered." And so there was lots of that through it as well. And if you did play your way through all of the campaign, and I'd recommend you look this up on YouTube as well, there's the final kind of cutscene that you see when you finish the campaign, and it is so poetic about how all these men and women fought in World War One, and they did what they had to do. Sometimes they were heroic, sometimes they weren't, but they deserve to be remembered for what they went through, even if less than a generation later we had World War Two. And it is incredibly, the writers did such well. Graphics wise, Battlefield 1 looks amazing. You have this all this photometry they used to bring photorealistic images, and obviously on the PC it looks really good, because it can be running at really high frame rates. On the Xbox Series S, it looks really good because you're getting 1080p 60 frames a second. But to be honest, on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, it looked really good anyway. I remember you would walk around, you'd look at rocks and go, they're really good looking rocks, those. And you would get the explosions going off that look amazing. I mean, the first time you saw one of the big Zeppelin airships on fire and crashing on Monte Grappa or something like that, you were like, oh my gosh, this is like I'm in a movie. And the sounds kind of went along with that as well, in terms of the explosions, the way the guns sounded, but the music, there should be an Academy Award for video game music, and Battlefield 1 should get that. You have all these rousing choruses, and it's all linked to whatever's going on in the game. So as you're on Operations, when you're charging that final objective, the music is swelling and it's driving you on. And then there's sad music, there's happy music. It is really good. And throughout its life as well, although it was a little bit slow to get started. I think that the French DLC didn't come out till after Christmas, Once it did start to get rolling, we had there was the French DLC. I think there was 4 maps in that, and there was the Russian DLC. There was the Maritime DLC, and then finally there was the Apocalypse DLC. I think Apocalypse was the last one, where it kind of went back to the fields of Western France, and we revisited, the trenches basically with those, and they brought in new game modes. As I said, with the French DLC, we got Frontlines, and if you were there, you will remember when Frontlines first came out, there was no time limit to the game, and we played these games that went on for hours, where you'd be pushed. So Frontlines is basically, imagine Conquest, but in a straight line, and you can only capture 1 capture point at a time. And the idea is to say there's 6 capture points, get to the enemy last capture point, and then you blow up a couple of telegraph telegraph machines, and it would just go backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards and back, and the battle would be going on and on. But this is classic Battlefield battles, where you have Battlefield moments where you're standing there and there's a tank exploding next to you, there's an aeroplanes fighting above you, there's an aeroplane crashing, there's people sniping you from half a mile away. Meanwhile, the explosions are going off and the music is blasting through your headphones or your speakers, and it is very, very good. So there was lots and lots of content, lots and lots of really good maps that had lots of different flavours as well, that were, I think, very, very special, and indeed. And they say you don't really know what you've got until it's gone, and then it wasn't really until Battlefield 5 came along, and especially Battlefield 2042, where these games didn't get half the content that Battlefield 1 got through. Now, a lot of streamers and YouTubers especially, they weren't that much of a fan of Battlefield 1, mainly because of the way that the weapons work. And I always kind of have a chip on my shoulder about this, because I enjoyed Battlefield 1 all the way through, and this was because the weapons of Battlefield 1 have something called random bullet deviation. So when you have a weapon and you point it at a wall and you pull the trigger, the bullet will appear somewhere in the wall, but if you pull the trigger again, there will be a little bit of difference, like it could be recoil, as befitting the weapons at the time. But this means that occasionally when you're shooting your weapons, you're going to miss people even though you seem to be on target, and there was a lot of pushback against this. But I think the weapon system in Battlefield 1 was spot on as well. It wasn't complicated. You chose, do you want to be a medic, do you want to be a supply, do you want to be a sniper, do you want to be an assault, and then within those classes you could choose particular weapons. And there wasn't dozens of different attachments. In fact, there was no attachments in Battlefield 1. All you had was the choice of different types of weapons. So for most guns, there would be 3 versions of it: one with a glass sight, one with an optical sight, and one with iron sights. And that was it. So you just chose which one you want. So you weren't constantly trying to think about what the best class was. Like from Battlefield 4, where you'd be thinking, okay, I'm going to use the H23, and I need to use this grip, and I need to use, this sight on it. There was none of that. It was just choose the weapon that suits you, dive in and just play the game and just enjoy it, which I think was fantastic. And then you had these great specialists, that worked very well as well. So, the medic was very powerful with their syringe, and it worked very well on console, unlike Battlefield 5, where they changed the way that you use the syringe. The gadget variety was absolutely amazing. The mortar for the support characters, so much fun, allowing you to put down smoke as you were approaching a target, so you could really be a team player. Was so good indeed, and it meant that you had to have the idea of the rock paper scissors that DICE always go on about, and so so you can choose to be an assault character who's got an anti-tank gun and anti-tank grenade, but you are just going to end up with an SMG that really hasn't got much range, so you say, okay, so I'll be a support player with an LMG, where I've got loads of ammo, and I've got a mortar, but you can't heal yourself. And so you would play as a squad with specialists, whereas obviously with 2042, as I understand it, really the specialists can be you can have whichever weapons and whichever bits you really want, can't you? There's not much changes. And also the fact that there are no hero types as well. So the classes, you're just a soldier, and that's you, and you crack on and you get on with it. And yeah, I mean, I think all you've really got to do with Battlefield 1 is look at the footage, and hopefully you'll go, oh my god, this looks so good. Criticisms of Battlefield 1, I think the load times were bad. the load times were really, really bad. And you could argue that the battle pass system, not the battle, sorry, the season pass system they used, where you had to either buy the super duper version, so you got everything, or you had to buy the individual map packs, was outdated. And what they should have done was give you all the content for free as it came out, and then pay for the rest in cosmetics. However, looking at the way that Battlefield 5 turned out, and Battlefield 2042 is turning out, that that doesn't work. We didn't get half the content we should have done with Battlefield 5. Poor Battlefield 2042 players, and this is the first Battlefield that I haven't bought in recent years. I think they've had one map, and the game came out November last year. So there we go. So Battlefield 1, absolutely amazing. I don't think we'll see the likes of Battlefield 1 again. I think that the problem was that the people at DICE, that they had worked through the first Battlefields, Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, and then they came to Battlefield 1, and I think they put everything into Battlefield 1. And the people who were at DICE for Battlefield 1, most of them left when Battlefield 5 came around, and especially when Battlefield 2042, they got promoted or they left the company. They had done their thing. I could imagine being a developer playing Battlefield 1 behind the scenes before it released, going, guys, this is it. We have done such an amazing job. I'm done. I'm done with the 60-hour work weeks. I'm done with working every single weekend. I'm going to go off and do something else. I'm pretty sure that's kind of what happened. I don't know, maybe we'll get the people back. Maybe get people, developers who grew up with Battlefield 1 and really recognise it for what it is. And lots of streamers and content creators are seeing that now. You see a lot more Battlefield 1 videos coming out where they go, oh, how amazing was Battlefield 1? And it's like, well, yeah, it was. But just remember, lots of you guys slagged it off when it was a live game, and you were like, oh, Battlefield 5 is going to be better. And and look what happened. So Battlefield 1, I think it's amazing. Thank you to everybody who ever played with me, but it is still out there. You can still play it. Just make sure you use the server browser, search all, go into the filters, make sure you have all regions selected, and you will find games. There's lots and lots of people playing Battlefield 1 on PlayStation, Xbox and PC. It is still live. You can still play it, and let's still keep that game alive. So there we go. That is enough of me rambling on. As you can see, I love Battlefield 1. If you've enjoyed the video, hit like. If you want to see more of the same, press subscribe, and I will of course see you again soon.